Welcome back to Real Roots Radio. I'm so glad to have my pal CJ Lewandowski joining us on the program today. How you doing, CJ?
I'm good. How are you, Daniel?
Doing well. Doing well. I know you've been in the unique position as the curator and caretaker of Bobby Osborne's final recordings, working on completing an album that the two of you started a while before Bobby's passing. And we have a new song from that project that's going to be released today. But what's it mean to you to kind of have this final chapter of Bobby's legacy in your hands?
Initially it wasn't, the final chapter at all. It was just, me and Bobby getting together, and the way I kind of explained it to him when we come up with the concept was, showcasing our friendship. So, um, Bobby at one point in the studio mentioned something about this is probably the last time I'll sing or record this one. So he's 91, so there's there's always that. But we were actually planning a second record because he had so many songs and so many titles, so many ideas that he wanted to make done. And I said, there's no time like the present. And Turnberry Records had already said, like, yeah, if there's enough material, let's just roll on and do two. So it was a little earth shaking when Bobby passed, to know that I had the last tracks of his voice. And he sang Rocky Top 2 weeks before he died in the studio, and he sang it right in the key of B like he did in 1967. And so there was some moments there. It was just like, I have some really incredible stuff. But Bobby had talked to me about helping me with a lot of different things through the year, through the years that I knew him, helping me do this and helping me get there, and uh, all little things. And when he passed, it was like, what? None of this stuff is going to happen now because he's gone. But actually, he gave it to me in a different way, and it was this material, and he trusted me. He trusted me with getting the musicians. He just wanted to come in there and sing and play the mandolin, and I wanted to surround him with people that loved him and would support him too. And that's what we did. And so to have the memories, for one, is the biggest thing. To being in the studio with Bobby was it's unexplainable, like the power that he had even at 91. But yeah, we started it about 6 months before he passed. We had started the idea about 8 to 10 months before that, and finally got in the studio in January 23. So this newest recording is one of the last tracks that we cut with Bobby. We were in the studio, and Lincoln Hensley. We were sitting at the Ben Surratt studio in Nashville, and Lincoln Hensley had Sonny's old Granada banjo that is extremely famous. And Judy Osborne was so gracious to let us borrow it for the recordings. And Judy was there as well. And it's kind of the first time that her and Bobby had hung out for many, many, many years. And so there were some incredible stories there too. But um, Lincoln just kicked off, Rosie Bokay on that banjo, that notorious kickoff, and Bobby just kind of looked and grinned, and he said, he said, that's my favorite George Jones song. And I looked at him, I said, well, that's one of my favorite songs that you've ever cut. And he said, well, I said, do you want to do it again? And he said, nobody could beat it like George. Nobody could sing it like George. And he said, but let's try it. So we went in and cut the track, and he sang along with it, and it was a scratch.
For folks that don't know, scratch vocal is just something for the pickers to play to. It's not
Yes.
necessarily meant to be a final track at all. So it's just to kind of keep the pace of the
Yeah,
track moving along.
Bobby
So
was yeah, Bobby was singing for the musicians to play to, and then once we got our music down as far as the instrumentation, then Bobby would come back and sing to the instrumentation. So that would be your scratch vocal. And it was at the end of a long day. We'd been there 8 hours, and Bobby was tired, and his voice was a little tired. So he said, I think I can do it better. Let's do it on the next session. And unfortunately, we never got his vocal on this one. So this is actually the first single. The first single that we did was "Too Old to Die Young," which was myself and Bobby singing together. And then the second single was Cora Is Gone with myself, Billy Strings, and Bobby singing on it. So this is the first single that from the recording that Bobby is actually not on. He was there the day that we cut the instrumentation, but we couldn't get him in there to sing the vocals. So this was actually a song that I was going to scrap because Bobby wasn't there. I didn't know what to do with it. And actually, Wyatt Ellis was taking vocal lessons from Paul Brewster, and he said something about, I think Paul might want to do something on the project if there's room. And I thought about it for a while, and I didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, let's call Paul. So I called him and talked to him a little bit, and he started talking about traveling down the road in his car. He said, that Some Things I Want to Sing About album. He said, there's a couple songs on there that I brought to the band. And it was just me and Bobby driving down the road to the next gig one day. And he said, I had a George Jones cassette tape and there was Rosie Bokay on it. And Bobby liked it. And that's where it went from there. So I said, well, we've got a track of Rosie Bokay. Paul, do you want to sing it? And he did. And he sang it. And so there's no better, there's no replacement to Bobby's vocal, but I think it's right up there where it should be. I think it was meant to be that Paul was to sing this for the project because it's incredible. It really is.
After Bobby's passing, you said you had quite a few songs that he had already laid down his part for, but you had some parts of some other songs, and with it being his final batch of recordings, the project kind of took on a different lens as well, right? To kind of pay homage to a legend that everybody in bluegrass has looked up to for decades.
Yeah, that I didn't know what to do. There were several choices. I could scrap it, the whole thing. I could, and for a minute there, I was a little depressed to where I wanted to just not listen to anything and hear it. But Bobby came to me one night sitting on my front porch after he had gone. It was like he was sitting right next to me, and he said, I gave you something, now do what you want to with it. And those, like, I was literally sitting out on my porch by myself, and it was like he was standing right next to me and said that to me. It was in his voice, plain as day. And so that's when I started jumping and trying to I said, well, if anything, we're going to release I guess what you would call an EP of the tracks that we did, like 8 songs. That's all we got. We'll do that. Well, then that's what I was going for. I was going to push for that. We were going to finish Rosie Bokay and then finish the project. Well, at IBMA, Del McCurry was the reason why we kept going, because he was back there singing "She's No Angel" and all these old Osborne songs, and Ronnie and Rob were back there chasing Carter. Myself and Bobby Osborne Jr. We had just did Bobby's tribute on the award show, and so backstage at the award show, they were jamming these songs, and me and Del and Bodge were singing together. So it was awesome. Bobby Jr., we were walking out, and he said, this might be, he said, if there's ever a time to ask somebody to be on this project, if we're going to do anything with guests, he said, now would be the time to do it. He said, and now would be the time to ask Del. And I said, well, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to eat with the Price sisters. And I said, well, I'll be back. And he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going back in there. And so that's when it erupted into, like, let's put some people on here that love Bobby and pay respects to him and pay homage to him and really make this something. And that's why, the project was started 2 years ago. And there's been a lot of people say, when's the project come out? When's the project come out? I've tried to set dates, but I don't want to rush anything. And there's been some very, very important people to me, and I think important to the industry too, that have wanted to be part of this project. And we have to find space in their schedule as well as our schedules to make it work. So it's been 2 years, but it'll be, I've got, let's see, what's today? In 2 days, Molly Tuttle will be singing. And then also this month, AJ Lee will be singing on the project as well. So those are the last two vocals that we need, and from there it's gravy. But we had to wait for people's schedules to open up, just as Billy Strings and Dell and Ronnie and Rob and several others that are on there. But it's turned into something very incredible and something that I never thought that I would be at the helm of. To get a phone call from Vince Gill and say, hey, are you still doing that Bobby Osborne project? Yeah. And he said, well, I used to sing on the first record I ever cut with a bluegrass band back in Oklahoma. He said, I sang Lonesome Feeling. He said, I'd like to sing Lonesome Feeling on the project. Like
he did
had
that one.
thought about it.
He did that one on the Opry after Bobby passed away.
That's right.
Just him and the guitar. It was amazing.
Yep. That's right. And so, the friends that I've made from it just has been incredible. And that's another one of those things that I reflect back when Bobby was saying that he had these ideas to help me and all that. The ideas just, they kind of transformed into different ways of helping, And so this project has opened up a lot of doors for me. And even our, well, I'm backwards, the American Current exhibit, that I couldn't have that without Bobby. It's me and Bobby together, So, and I believe that Bobby is the only person since they started the American Currents exhibits at the Country Music Hall of Fame. I believe he's the only one that has been in there posthumously. So that's a pretty incredible feat for the Country Music Hall of Fame to say, even though you're gone, you've been extremely relevant all the way to the end. So, and I feel like that, that's a really good tip of the hat to Bobby and our project too. So, I'm excited. I'm ready to get it done and get it out, and so people can hear this incredible stuff. 91-year-old Bobby singing "Rank Strangers" is completely different than what it was on the Bluegrass Collection. It hurts in a whole different way. So it's gonna be good.
Chatting with CJ Lewandowski, the newest track from the upcoming project that he and Bobby Osborne started together is Rosie Bokay. Features Paul Brewster. Paul, of course, working with the Osborne Brothers in the 1980s. That Some Things I Want to Sing About album is one of my absolute favorites. And
Yes.
I have to give a shout out. Every time we play something off that record, I have to make sure I give Mom props because we have a vinyl copy of Some Things I Want to Sing About in the studio at the radio station that's signed by Bobby and signed by Sonny. And there's also a little label on it that says it belongs to Tammy. And so Mom always wants to make sure that we know that one is not Joe's. So
that's great.
Yeah, so just making sure we clear that up here. Rosie Bokay from that great project. There's so many great eras of the Osborne Brothers career and their recording output. What about the music they were making in the 1980s on records like Some Things I Want to Sing About makes that era of the Osborne Brothers so unique?
Man, I think they weren't trying so hard to be something. I think they were just being them. And they'd all been through, hardships and good times and the high notes and the low notes of the industry. What do you do after Rocky Top? That's a big question. Like everybody, if you're blessed enough, you'll have a Rocky Top in your life, but what do you do after that? So I think the guys were in there, the brothers were in a period of just wanting to be themselves and play the songs that they did. That Bluegrass Spectacular where they're live at Opryland, the energy.
Great album.
And the thing I really love too is they surrounded themselves in the early times. They concentrated on that trio. They concentrated on the three singers at all times. And then they just get their studio musicians and whatnot. And for the longest time, they travel the package shows with just those three pieces, whether it be Ronnie Reno or Dale Sled or whoever it may be, even Harley Gabbard. So they honed in on a band in the 80s. Paul Brewster, to take him, it was almost a shame to take him away from the Knoxville Grass, but the world needed to see Paul Brewster, not just this area of the country where I'm at. But you know, to get Paul and to get Brock on the bass, the electric bass, like that was a little different thing too, but it added a nice bounce to the music. Blaine Sprouse on the fiddle, or Glenn Duncan, or whoever it may be. At the time, there was so much good music going on in the live band. So I think they were just wanting to go out and have fun. And I think they were. You know, you can look at those Birchmere videos in like 79 and 80 and 81 and the early times when Paul is there and Bobby's chuckling and laughing. Bobby was stern faced on stage. He was there to do a job and be a professional. And he even said that. He said, I didn't like that. I didn't like that cutting up stuff. He said, I was there to do my job and do it the best I could. But he was having a good time, you know, and that reflects in those videos. And I think it reflects in the recordings too. And it was the beginning of, I really think it was the beginning of passing the torch of the Osborne Brothers sound. Like they started to entrust other people with their songs. And you see that through Paul singing some of Bobby's hits through the years and giving Bobby a break from singing a little bit. And then Eldridge coming in and singing, you know, singing the classics and letting Bobby sing his songs that he wanted to sing. So the sharing of the material and passing of the torch was, you know, I think it was pretty important to them to make sure that their music was passed on within the right hands. So
great that you could bring. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
You cut up a little bit, so I thought you were.
Okay.
Great to bring Paul Brewster back in the studio to revisit a song that he sang on the Osborne Brothers rendition of. Who else is on the track in addition to yourself and Paul?
Lincoln Hensley's playing the banjo. Ansley Porchek is on the fiddles. She did both of those on the Twins. Bobby Osborne Jr. is on the bass. Avery Welter is on the guitar. Myself is I'm playing a mandolin, and Wyatt Ellis plays the twin mandolin part to me. And John Metter singing with Authentic Unlimited. He came in and sang a high part. Now, the original trio of Rosie Bokay was Bobby on the high side, doing a high lead. Just the Osborne Brothers, notorious, their famous trio. But when I got the recording of Paul singing in the same key that Bobby did, I was humming that part above, and I thought that would be really cool to change it up a little bit, to still pay respects to Bobby and Sonny, but also do it a little bit different. And what can we do? Like I don't want it to get so high that it doesn't compliment.
Get shrill. Yeah.
It gets shrill. And I kind of call it chipmunky. But I said, we can't do that. So I called John Metter, and he was in a Daly and Vincent recording session for the TV show. And I was like, man, have you ever heard of Rosie Bokay? And he said, no. And I said, well, that's your first mistake.
That's strike one for you.
Strike one. Okay. So I said, do you know who Paul Brewster is? He said, Paul Brewster is my hero. I said, okay, we're going to call that.
Okay. We'll erase that first strike now.
That's just a foul ball. So
yeah,
we sat there and talked about it. And I said, now Paul is singing this song, listen to this song. And then I'm hearing a part above it. And he said, okay. I said, well, it's in G. You think? He said, I don't know what the song is. I have no idea what it is. And about 2 weeks later, he sent me a recording of it. He had cut it at Stephen Burwell's house, and I said, that's it. So we changed the harmony structure around a little bit from the original of the Osborne Brothers, and so I'm singing the baritone, John's singing the high tenor, and then Paul singing right there in the middle. And Paul took it to another level. He studied those live versions. He studied some things I want to sing about album, but he studied the live stuff. Like my favorite video of Bobby ever, probably ever, is him singing Rosie Bokay at the Cannery right when the album come out, and he's wearing a polka dotted shirt. It just got big old polka dots on it. And he looks mad at the world, and he looks like he's out to prove a point. And I think it was right after he had had a heart attack. And so a lot of people were kind of questioning his stability and his mortality. And I think he got, knowing Bobby, I'm pretty sure he probably got mad about that. So on that TV show, I feel like he is trying to prove a point, and he sure does. And Paul took some of that. Paul's standing right next to him in the video, but Paul took some of his phrasing and stuff and the attitude that he had in that video and applied it to this recording, and it's just like, it's unbelievable. So Paul, I really appreciate Paul, wanting to do this, and it was the easiest conversation to have, and he had it 2 days after I talked to him. Like he was a champ, and said, "I got this. Yeah, I'll do it." He said, "Now Bobby had a little bit higher range than me." I said, "I think you can do it."
It's a great recording. It's available now from Turnberry Records. CJ Lewandowski and Paul Brewster paying homage to Bobby Osborne, the one and only. Their version of Rosie Bokay is available now. CJ, thanks so much for joining us on Real Roots Radio.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.